where should I go? Should I become Lutheran or Anglican or Catholic or Orthodox? And these become huge, huge questions. He did a recent interview with a popular Protestant apologist.
We have doctrinal unity that is ancient. We also have reverent liturgy and reverence for the Lord and reverence for those sacraments. And so that would be my sort of elevator pitch for people to go check it out. Go to their local LCMS, preferably one where, again, things are going the way they should be.
And was arguing that people should become his sect of Lutheranism and that they're completely cohesive. In reality, it's kind of like, do you really have more unity if you're talking about one little segment of Lutheranism? 2 million people versus what, the 70 or 80, 90 million Lutherans? I mean, all the Lutherans around me are quite liberal. They have really stepped away from what we think of the ancient church. Like Lutheranism was not even an option when I was discerning this thing. And even Anglicanism, I mean, when I was discerning Anglicanism, it was like, man, the priest here is a practicing homosexual. So it was like, okay, this is also a big issue. So you see those issues literally right in front of my face. And they're not just like these little side stories. These are dominant. Dominant. And then you look at some Orthodox church history, and there is great continuity going on there from what we see in the early church to the present day. Yeah, you have to wrestle through some things, but I think that there is a good case to be made. I remember my own journey. I went to a conference on the church fathers at Wheaton College, which was really a big sort of paradigm shift. I began reading the church fathers directly. And then right before I was graduating college, my friend was getting rid of some books. And so he gave me this book, Documents of the Christian Church, and this book, Christian Theology Reader by Alistair McGrath. And I just began reading the fathers firsthand. Then you eventually start putting the pieces together. Like, oh my goodness, like the early Christian fathers, the apostolic fathers, they many of them knew the apostles themselves. So they have greater weight than like Calvin or Luther or Zwingli, like the reformers. They have a great weight, particularly if they can show a unity. And this is why many Protestants, whether they become Orthodox or not, they are beginning to move along and have a higher view of the Eucharist. They're having a higher view of the saints. They're having a higher view of liturgy. I don't know where it's going to go, because Protestantism mostly changes every few years. It's kind of a chameleon that fragments, one group reacting off against of another. We're beginning to see, as the fathers are beginning to be taken more seriously, a movement. And I remember the conference that I went to on the Church Fathers was with a professor named Robert Weber. He was very early on in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. He was really into the convergence movement called the Ancient Faith, Ancient Future movement, where it was an attempt for Protestants to come closer to ancient Christianity and seek unity with Orthodox, Anglicans, and Catholics. Very interesting movement. What's interesting is that many of those people have moved on. What was going on in the 80s and 90s, one big group was the Evangelical Orthodox Church. Many of them became Orthodox. You probably are familiar with Peter Gilchrist's story. There's a whole book about that. Many of those priests are actually not that far from me. I hope to maybe have the opportunity to maybe interview them about their story from Protestantism through the Evangelical Orthodox Church to canonical Holy Orthodoxy, because their stories are important today. Why? Because they're the pioneers. I recently had somebody call me who went to the same college that I went to, Taylor University. And he was telling me, so I graduated in 2008. This man graduated in the 1970s. He called me. He got a hold of my number somehow. And he wanted to encourage me because he was a part of a prayer group at this evangelical university in the 1970s. And this prayer group would go from one church to another, traveling, 20 minutes, half hour, 45 minutes, visiting different churches, until eventually most of that prayer group became Orthodox. And he told me, I was just talking to him on the phone just a few days ago, actually on the Feast of the Dormition. And he said most of us from that prayer group are still Orthodox. And they became Orthodox before the Father Peter Gilchrist group did. That was a great encouragement to my heart, because I'm a graduate of Taylor University. I have many friends who have come from Taylor University or Indiana Wesleyan or Wheaton College or other evangelical universities who are seriously considering becoming Orthodox. And so I hope that story is helpful for you as you are considering potentially this move. There are people that have gone before you. Of course, not just people in the 100s and 200s and 300s in the early centuries, but even people in the 1960s and 70s and 80s here in the United States that have gone before us, who are praying for us. Some have already died. Some are still alive, like the gentleman that I just called, who called me out of the blue. I'm also going to be interviewing soon an iconographer who came from Indiana Wesleyan and discovered Orthodoxy. So there's a beautiful, wonderful movement coming from evangelicalism. Of course, there's high values of scripture and sharing your faith and having a personal relationship with the Lord and community that are also beautiful missions. But is evangelical enough? Or do we need to find the fullness of the faith by looking at the ancient church, the fathers, the councils, these robust doctrines and teachings even about salvation that go much deeper than a mere legality, but rather point to a robust understanding of theosis. So it's a beautiful time to consider the Holy Orthodox Church as the fullness of the faith, of deep Christianity. All right, guys, God bless. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye. The Wise Phone 2, which I currently use as my phone. It's an amazing phone that helps you not doom scroll or be addicted to social media and other vices because it doesn't have a web browser, but it does function like a phone. You can call, you can text, you can take pictures, you can do videos. It even has apps like Uber and Lyft. You can order food, maps to get around town, all the things that you kind of need in this modern life. While at the same time, being able to have a boundary between you and work or you and distractions. So you can be more present with your family, with your kids, with your spouse, whomever. This has been a very freeing experience for me to have the Wise Phone 2. Again, you can get $40 off through my discount code KING today.